Hello and welcome back to Cody's Chopper Corner. So today we're going to be doing a video on valve adjustments and a little bit of the basics on your valve train, and we'll go over a couple other little tricks and tips. So yeah, let's get into it. Alright, so just going over the basics here. This very crude drawing, you have your camshaft here, and these are your lobes of the camshaft, like you see here. You have intake lobes, exhaust lobes, intake lobes, and then another exhaust lobe back here. If you guys can see that. So as your engine spins, this cam will come up onto a lobe, whether it's intake or exhaust. And then you have what rides on the camshaft, which is your tappet or your roller. And it will ride on this as it spins. And what happens is this sits in the lifter block and it will go up as it comes up on one of those camshafts. So what that does is it pushes your push rod up right here. So the cam comes up, pushes this up, which in turn pushes this up, and then it will go to your rocker arm up inside your head. And when this comes up, this pushes this down, which will open your exhaust valve or intake valve to let that do its thing. And then when it comes off of the lobe as it spins around, it'll just pretty much work in reverse, sending the push rod down, the rocker arm down, the valve up, and it just repeats in this process. So today we'll be talking about setting your proper play in your, setting the proper valve lash basically in your push rods, to make sure all of this goes smoothly. Because if you have any space in between any of these points, your valve isn't going to open to its full potential. And if you have it too tight, then this valve will never seat in the head, which will allow compression to escape, and your bike will just run very poorly. It'll be really hard to start. So it's super, super important to be able to get this set properly. And that's what I'm going to show you guys today with a solid lifter push rod adjustment. So you might be asking yourself, well, how do I even know if I have solid push rods? And what push rods do I have? And that's a good question, because it's pretty important to know that before you start adjusting, because if you do it the wrong way, it could do serious damage to your engine. So let's go over a couple different setups, and that way you can tell the difference. All right, so we'll go over a couple of the differences here. So this is your lifter block. It sits on your bike, on the engine. You have two of them, front and back. And this here is your lifter or your tappet. This slides up into here. It's kind of hard to do one-handed. It goes up into there like that. And then this is what you're gonna see when you pull your push rod cover off, which I'll show you how to do. So this is gonna be the stock setup for shovel heads and some pan heads. It'll have this setup here. And that's how you know you have hydraulics. And a good way to test, like if your bike's running badly or something, a good way to test if they're good or not is if the bike's pumped up with oil and you can squish that spring down like that, then this little unit here is bad and you're gonna wanna replace that. You can go and replace these with new ones, or you can go and do what I usually do and buy these S&S solid lifter conversion kit. They're pretty cheap and they're super easy to install. You take that out, you'll take the cup out that holds that old unit like that, and then you just take this piece and you slide it in just like that, and now you've converted your hydraulic lifters to solid lifters. A lot less maintenance. They are a little bit more loud, so some guys prefer to do the hydraulics, but these typically don't fail on you like the hydraulic would, so I like to just use these ones. Okay, so what you're gonna need to do this job is a flathead screwdriver, 2 7/16 wrenches, open end, and a pair of vice grips. They don't have to be that big, that's all I could find. All right guys, you'll have to forgive my poor camera work on this. Let me get a couple things. So to take these off, they're already off right now. To take them off, they sit in here like this. And it's pretty simple. All you have to do is pull this collar down and these will pop out, and then you collapse the tube like that. And so we'll have those removed. The next step is you're going to want to take and hold these up. Some guys will use a clothespin or a piece of wire that goes up to the top, which is pretty handy. I'm gonna grab one of those really quick. It goes on there like so. And just kind of bend it around so it holds it up out of your way so you can see what you're doing. And these aren't anything fancy, it's just a piece of baling wire. And there you go. So now those are up out of your way. So what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna rotate your engine over until either one of these valves comes all the way up to its final height, and just before it starts to go down. Then you're gonna stop. So let's do that right now. It makes it a little easier if you take your spark plugs out first, so you're not working against compression. So using the kicker, we're going to turn the engine over, like I said, until one of these two valves comes all the way to the top of its lift. See, this rear exhaust is starting to lift now. Okay, so I can see that it's just starting to drop back down. So once this one's all the way up as far as it can go, we're going to adjust the opposite valve, the opposite push rod, because we know this one is all the way on top of one of the lobes. So this one can't be on a lobe, so we're gonna adjust that one, because they're not on a lobe at the same time. So to do this, you are going to use your 7/16 wrench and hold on to this, and you want to break this lock nut loose, and then you can unthread the whole push rod off of the piece that goes down into this here. It kind of sounds confusing. I'm not explaining it very well, but I'll show you what I mean. So once you break this nut free, the jam nut, you can take one finger and put it down on this nut here, and the other fingers, and you start spinning this, and it'll start elongating your push rod. And you go until you feel it stop and back off just a little bit. Then you can take this jam nut here and spin it all the way up to the top without letting this or this move. And what you're looking for is to be able to freely spin this with your finger, but have no up and down at all. So freely spin, slight resistance, and no up and down. And then what you'll do is you'll take your vice grips and you'll vice grip up here, and then you take and tighten this nut right here all the way until it's locked down, and then you're going to check your push rod and make sure you have no up and down and that it still spins freely. And I'll show you guys that next. Okay, so now you're going to take your vice grips, you're going to lock on up here, tighten that down, and you're going to come in with your 7/16 wrench, and you're going to tighten this jam nut up against your push rod. All the way, you want to get it pretty tight. There you go, that's tight. We're going to remove this. This is a big thing because you don't want to check it with the vice grips on there, because that's going to create drag that's not really there. So we're going to come back in. We have no up and down, still spins freely, so that one's done. Then we're going to come back. We're going to let this one go all the way up to the very top until it stops moving and almost starts to come back down. Then we'll adjust this one. Some guys do this to where they'll get it on top dead center and try to do it, or they'll do rear exhaust and then they'll do front intake or whatever. But I like to just do it one cylinder at a time so that I know that this cylinder is good and I can focus on this one. Once this one's done, I move to the front cylinder or vice versa. Okay, so now I'm going to rotate the engine over, like we were just saying, until this valve is at its highest point. This one is going to be at its lowest point, and then I'll adjust this one. It's about right there. What you can't see is that I'm moving the kicker, and I moved it a pretty good way without this one moving anymore. That means it's on the peak of its lobe, and it's about ready to start going down. So now this one will be very loose, as you can see, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take this, put our finger here, and start spinning this up. This is making it longer. Okay, so now I don't have any up and down, and I can spin it still. So then, just like before, we're going to come in here. Maybe, this is why you need two 7/16. Put one here, and we're going to break this loose. So now, I can come in and spin this lock nut all the way up. And you want to double check this whole process. Keep spinning it, make sure it's still free with no up and down. So now I'm going to come in with my vice grips, clamp up here again, and snug this nut down. And don't get frustrated if you snug that nut down and then you come back here and it's too tight or too loose. Just redo the process. It's kind of a special touch to get this jam nut tight without tightening this or loosening this. So again, I'm going to come in here with the vice grips, clamp down, come in here to the lock nut. I'm going to lock that. Do that until it's tight. We'll check it, see what we have. No up and down. Still spins freely. That's tight. cylinders done. But what you want to do before you finish and move on to the next one is you want to rotate your engine over at least 360 degrees and recheck these just in case you were coming off of a lobe or coming onto a lobe when you were adjusting. That's how you double check to make sure that you adjusted these properly. So I'm going to go ahead and spin this over a couple times. We're going to double check both of these. And to double check them, you do the same thing that you would have done with finding with the initial adjustment. You have one or the other come all the way up to the very top, and before it starts coming down, you're going to check the opposite. So let's spin that over. So this front exhaust, or this rear exhaust, is starting to go to its top. There. Come back here and check this one. See? That one's a little loose. It has a little bit of up and down. So I'm going to readjust this one and then check again. This is why we double check. Doesn't matter how many times you've done it. Doesn't matter how good you are. Sometimes that's just the way it goes. So we're going to readjust and then check again. Alright. So off camera, I just went ahead and readjusted this one again. No up and down. It spins freely. Slight resistance. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this whole thing over again and check this again. Go. Perfect. Now I'm going to double check this one. Waiting for the rear to come all the way up. About right there. Check this one. Perfect. No up and down. Spins freely. And I would say we're done. And on the front, it's going to be the exact same thing. But I'm going to show you guys a little trick putting these back together. Alright, so these can be a pain sometimes if you don't know how to do them. So we're going to take these off. You're going to pull just this inner tube up, and you want to wiggle it around so that it'll seat up inside the head. And then hold some pressure on that. Make sure it's seated down into the lifter block, and then we'll pull these down. And then this is where your flathead screwdriver comes in. You're going to take the top of this piece here and wedge it up into there, and then take your screwdriver and stick it inside of this clip, and then you can pry down and push with your thumb at the same time. And it pops in just like that. Real easy, super simple. Some of you might already know that trick, but for the ones who don't, it really is kind of a lifesaver. Again, stick this top piece in, screwdriver into here, pry down on the collar. Sometimes like this right here, you can see it's kinking, it's catching one of these fins back here, so you got to kind of lift. You got to kind of wiggle this around a little bit to make sure it goes in. But there you go. Easy peasy. This whole cylinder is done. All right, guys, so there you have it. Fairly easy, basic rundown of a valve adjustment on your bike on solid lifters. And like I said, if you're going to do the front cylinder, it's the exact same way. You just want to find where your push rod is at the lowest point and adjust that valve, and then swap over, do the same thing on the other valve. And then remember to always rotate the engine a couple times and double check all of your work. Make sure your jam nuts are up there tight, or else it'll back off while you're riding and your push rods will collapse and your bike will run like shit. So anyways, thanks again for watching the video. And oh yeah, also it was really cool meeting some of you guys over at Mama Tried out in Milwaukee. That was a lot of fun. I hope to meet more of you guys soon. And yeah, if you guys like these videos, please continue to share and also like and subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you guys on the next one.